This morning, U.S. gas prices are now above $4 a gallon, and President Trump is hinting at the possibility the U.S. could end its efforts in Iran without opening the critical Strait of Hormuz. The president wrote in part this morning about U.S. allies. All of these countries that can't get jet fuel because of the Strait of Hormuz, like the United Kingdom, which refused to get involved in the decapitation of Iran. I have a suggestion for you. Number one, buy from the U.S. We have plenty. Number two, build up some delayed courage, go to the strait and just take it. He added, the USA won't be there to help you anymore. With us now is Congressman Rich McCormick, a Republican from Georgia, a member of the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, always great to see you. How would you feel if the United States ended its efforts in and around Iran and the Strait of Hormuz was still effectively closed?
Well, there's a lot of options on the table. Obviously, you have Marines, you have the 82nd Airborne. People are worried about him going in on the ground, and people are worried about him leaving. This is one of the amazing things about President Trump is you don't know what he's going to do, and some people get frustrated with that. But I was very critical of other administrations when they announced everything they were going to do, which is really bad when the enemy is planning to oppose you. If I'm in the military, I want you guessing. I want you wondering what we're going to do next, and I think this is more to play in that because, as you know, he's announced not just one plan, but probably several.
We are quite aware that he's offered several plans, sometimes in conflict with each other. But what I'm asking is what you think. Would you be satisfied with the end of U.S. efforts if the Strait of Hormuz was still closed?
No, of course not. I'm one of those guys who always say if you're going to go in and do something, do it full-throated. Don't hold back. If you go to command and staff school, warfighting school, war college, we always talk about how you lose popular support. It's usually when you go half measures. When you go into Vietnam or Afghanistan or Iraq and you don't go full measures, it lasts a lot longer and you lose popular support. I would make the case that's why Afghanistan was not a complete success. We should have never came out of Afghanistan. We had fewer people there than we had in Spain. We never even fought a war in Spain. We paid the price for that. The Afghanis were then paying the price. And I think we make mistakes like that a lot in our history because we don't want the Americans to feel the pain. They're obviously feeling the pain right now, but this is temporary. We have the ability to control the straits. We have the ability to control Karg Island. We have the ability to cripple Iran so they cannot sponsor Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, or project power around the world. That's a good thing. But I think we should finish this for sure.
And I should have noted you're, a Marine, a Marine helicopter pilot, also a military emergency room doctor. So you've got extensive experience serving the United States. And obviously we thank you for that. You talk about half measures. So just to be clear, do you believe it would be a half measure if the U.S. efforts were to end and the strait was still closed?
To be clear, I think President Trump is using his ability to put pressure on his allies to get involved. I think he does this a lot. I don't think he's intending to vacate the straits. I don't think he's intending to leave this unmeasured or undone. I think he's doing this to put a lot of pressure on people who should be involved for the right reasons.
So Richard Haas, the president emeritus of the Council on Foreign Relations, called that strategy the "we broke it, you own it" strategy to U.S. allies. U.S. allies who were not part of the initial attack or any of the attacks on Iran, but the president is now calling on them to be the ones to open the strait. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
I can understand why you'd say that, but quite frankly, I think we're dealing with something that was affecting the entire world anyways. Iran always had the control of the Hormuz Straits, and I think they've always been projecting hate and discontent, terrorism around the world. I mean, we all suffer from that. We have been paying the price, not only with them, with NATO, with the United Nations, and other organizations for decades now. So this is nothing new.
You say they've always had control of the Strait of Hormuz. Do you know when the last time was that the strait was open?
Obviously, I do. I know it was before the war, but this is something they've always threatened us. They've always talked about raining fire down from heaven on the great Satan, which is us. They've actively killed probably around 1,000 Americans through their proxies, over 40 attacks. This stuff wasn't going to go away.
Yeah, I was in Iraq with U.S. troops who were constantly under attack from Iranian proxies there, to be clear. I do want to ask you, there's 460 kilograms of enriched uranium, nuclear possible, the ingredients for nuclear material still in Iran. That was an assessment from Steve Witkoff just the other day. Again, this gets to how would you be satisfied, or would you be satisfied if that material's still in Iran when the war is over? Would that be a successful mission?
I don't think so. I'm looking to see what they're going to do with that. I think that's going to be part of the negotiations to end this. First of all, having full access to anything that's nuclear. Either the Israelis are going to go in there and raid them, or we're going to go in there and raid them, or we're going to have somebody that will come in there armed to the teeth. But I think ultimately that is the main weapon I'm mostly concerned with. If you read that book, Nuclear War, and you talk about how one crazy person could be Kim Jong-un or someone in Iran through an autocratic theocracy, somebody who doesn't really care what happens to the world. That's what the most concerning thing is, literally fulfilling a prophecy in their mind, talking about raining down fire from heaven. That sounds like a nuclear weapon to me, that they would kill 50,000 of their own citizens. What do you think they'd do to us? That's the thing that keeps me awake at night for sure.
All right. Congressman Rich McCormick from Georgia, we do appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much for being with us.